I need you to understand something before I begin. I'm not crazy. I know how this sounds. I know what you're thinking right now, reading this, listening to my voice. But I'm not making this up. I wish I was. God, I wish this was just some story I invented for attention, or some nightmare I could wake up from. But it's not. It happened. It's still happening. And if you're hearing this, maybe it means I still have time. Or maybe it means I'm already gone, and this recording is all that's left of who I used to be. My name is Marcus Webb. I'm 32 years old. I worked as a sound engineer in Portland, Oregon. I lived alone in a renovated warehouse apartment downtown, the kind with exposed brick and industrial pipes running across the ceiling, big windows, high ceilings, open space. I loved that place, past tense, because 3 weeks ago, something changed, something broke, and now I don't know if I'm still in my apartment or if my apartment is still in the same world it used to be. It started with a noise, just a noise. That's what I kept telling myself. That's what I wrote in my journal on the first night. Probably the building settling, old pipes, HVAC system acting up, normal explanations for normal sounds. Except the sound wasn't normal, not really. I just didn't want to admit it yet. I should probably start from the beginning, give you context, tell you who I was before all this, so you understand what I've become. I was methodical, logical. I built my entire career around precision, measuring frequencies, isolating audio artifacts, cleaning up recordings until they were perfect. I didn't believe in ghosts. I didn't believe in anything I couldn't quantify, measure, or explain. My world made sense. It had rules, cause and effect, input and output. I'd been living in that apartment for 14 months when it started, November 23rd. I remember because I just finished a big project, mixing audio for an indie horror film actually. The irony isn't lost on me. I was exhausted, burned out. My eyes hurt from staring at screens for 16-hour days. I'd barely left the apartment in 2 weeks. Looking back, I wonder if that isolation made me more vulnerable somehow. Like I'd created a pocket of space that was too separate from the rest of the world. Too quiet, too still. That night, I made myself dinner, frozen pizza, nothing fancy, and collapsed on my couch with a beer. The apartment was dark except for the glow from my TV, some documentary about deep-sea creatures. I wasn't really watching. I was just existing, decompressing, letting my brain turn off for the first time in weeks. That's when I heard it, a sound, coming from somewhere behind me, from the direction of my bedroom door, which was closed. It was soft at first, almost imperceptible, a kind of rustling, like fabric moving, or paper being crumbled very slowly. I muted the TV and listened. The sound continued for maybe 5 seconds, then stopped. I waited. Nothing. I unmuted the TV and tried to ignore it. Probably just the building, I thought. Old warehouse, weird acoustics. I designed entire soundscapes for a living. I knew how buildings could play tricks on your ears. But then it happened again. Louder this time, more deliberate. In this time, I could swear I heard something underneath the rustling, a kind of rhythm, like breathing, slow, deep, wet. I stood up. My heart was already beating faster, though I told myself I was being ridiculous. I walked toward my bedroom door, solid wood, painted white, nothing special, and pressed my ear against it, listening. The sound had stopped. I reached for the handle, turned it slowly, and pushed the door open. My bedroom looked exactly as I'd left it. Unmade bed, clothes piled on a chair, window closed, curtains drawn. Empty. Completely empty. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding and laughed at myself. Jesus, Marcus, get some sleep. But as I turned to leave, I heard it again, right behind me. So close I could feel it. A wet, ragged exhale, like something had been holding its breath and finally let it out. I spun around. Nothing. Just my empty bedroom, but the air felt different now. Thicker, colder, and there was a smell I hadn't noticed before, something metallic and organic, like rust mixed with decay. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my couch with every light in the apartment on, listening, waiting. But the sound didn't come back. Not that night. Over the next 3 days, I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Auditory hallucination brought on by exhaustion, stress, too much caffeine and too little sleep. I even made an appointment with my doctor, though I canceled it later. I didn't want to seem paranoid. I didn't want to be that guy who thinks his apartment is haunted. But the noises continued, and they were getting worse. Night 2. The same rustling sound, but this time coming from inside my closet. When I opened the door, my clothes were swaying slightly, as if something had just brushed past them. But there was no wind, no open windows, no rational explanation. Night 3. I woke up at 3:17 a.m. to the sound of footsteps, heavy, deliberate, walking slowly across my bedroom floor. I lay frozen in bed, staring at the ceiling, too terrified to move. The footsteps stopped right beside my bed. I could hear breathing, that same wet, labored sound, just inches from my face. I closed my eyes and prayed for it to stop. Eventually, it did. When I finally worked up the courage to turn on the light, I was alone, but there were marks on the hardwood floor beside my bed. Not footprints exactly, more like imprints, as if something incredibly heavy had been standing there, pressing down into the wood. I took photos. I measured them. I tried to analyze them the way I would analyze a sound wave, looking for patterns, explanations, some kind of logic, but there was nothing. Just these strange, circular indentations that shouldn't have been there.
By day 4, I was barely eating. I'd stopped working. I spent most of my time sitting in the living room, staring at my bedroom door, waiting for something to happen. And that's when I noticed it. The door was wrong. I can't explain it better than that. It looked the same white paint, same brass handle, same scuff marks along the bottom, but something about it had changed. The proportions felt off, like it was slightly too tall or too narrow, or positioned a few inches to the left of where it should have been. I measured it, 68 inches, exactly what it had always been, but my eyes kept insisting it was different. And then, on the 5th night, I saw it move. I was sitting on the couch, watching the door like I'd been doing for hours, when the surface began to ripple, like water disturbed by a stone. The paint seemed to shift and flow, wood grain twisting into new patterns. I rubbed my eyes, blinked hard, but it kept happening. The door was breathing, expanding slightly with each inhale, contracting with each exhale. Slow, rhythmic, alive. I stood up, my legs shaking, and walked toward it. I reached out, my hand trembling, and touched the surface. It was warm, body temperature, and underneath my palm I could feel a pulse, a heartbeat, slow and strong, like something massive was sleeping just on the other side. That's when I understood. This wasn't my bedroom door anymore. It was a threshold, a gateway, and something on the other side was trying to come through. I should have left, packed a bag, walked out, never looked back. That's what any sane person would have done. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because part of me, the part that had spent years analyzing sounds, searching for patterns, trying to understand the inexplicable, part of me needed to know what was on the other side of that door. It took me 2 more days to work up the courage, 2 days of watching the door breathe, 2 days of hearing whispers in the walls, seeing shadows move in my peripheral vision, smelling that metallic decay growing stronger, 2 days of feeling like I was losing my mind. On the 7th night, I made my decision. I gathered supplies, flashlight, phone, pocket knife, water bottle, like I was preparing for an expedition, which I suppose I was. I stood in front of the door for 20 minutes, my hand on the handle, trying to convince myself this was a terrible idea. But the whispers were louder now, almost like voices, almost like they were calling my name. I turned the handle. The door opened easily, smoothly, without a sound. And on the other side, it wasn't my bedroom. The space beyond the door was vast, impossibly vast. Where my small bedroom should have been, maybe 12 feet by 14 feet, there was now a corridor stretching into darkness. The walls were the same exposed brick as my apartment, but they were wrong. The bricks were arranged in patterns that hurt to look at, geometric impossibilities that seemed to shift and reconfigure whenever I wasn't looking directly at them. The floor was still hardwood, but it was wet, not damp, wet, covered in a thin layer of water that reflected the dim, sourceless light coming from somewhere above. The air was cold, so cold I could see my breath. And the smell, God, the smell, it was overwhelming now. Rust and rot and something else, something living and ancient and wrong. I stepped through the doorway. The water beneath my feet was warm, despite the cold air. It soaked through my shoes immediately, and I could feel something in it. Not just water, something thicker, more viscous. I didn't want to think about what it might be. Behind me, the door swung shut. I spun around, reaching for it, but it was already gone. In its place was just more brick wall, solid, seamless, as if the door had never existed. I was trapped. My flashlight cut through the darkness ahead, illuminating the corridor. It seemed to go on forever, twisting and turning, branching off into other passages. I started walking because I didn't know what else to do. My footsteps echoed strangely, too loud, too distorted, like the acoustics of this place didn't follow normal rules. Each step sent ripples through the water, and I watched them spread outward, disturbing something beneath the surface. I didn't look too closely. I didn't want to see what might be down there. After what felt like an hour, though my phone insisted only 6 minutes had passed, I reached the first junction. 3 corridors branching off in different directions, left, right, and straight ahead. They all looked identical. Same brick walls, same wet floor, same sourceless light. But from the corridor on the left, I heard something. That breathing sound. Closer now. Much closer. I turned right. I don't know why. Instinct maybe. Or fear. I just knew I couldn't go toward that sound. Not yet. Not until I understood what I was dealing with. The corridor twisted and turned. Sometimes the ceiling dropped so low I had to crouch. Sometimes the walls pressed in so close I had to turn sideways to squeeze through. And always, there was water on the floor. Getting deeper, rising slowly but steadily. By the time I reached the first chamber, it was up to my ankles. The chamber was large, maybe 30 feet across, and circular. The walls were covered in something that looked like writing, symbols I didn't recognize, carved deep into the brick. Some of them were glowing faintly, pulsing in rhythm with that ever-present heartbeat I could feel thrumming through the floor. In the center of the chamber was a pillar, or maybe it was a statue. It was hard to tell. The shape kept changing depending on how I looked at it. Sometimes it seemed human. Sometimes it seemed like something else entirely. Something with too many limbs, too many eyes. I approached it slowly, my flashlight beam shaking.
As I got closer, I realized the pillar was breathing too, the surface expanding and contracting, just like the door had. And carved into its base, in letters I could actually read, was a single word. Home. That word, that single word, it broke something in my mind, because I realized with horrible certainty that this place, this impossible, twisted nightmare space, this was someone's home. Something lived here, maybe many somethings, and I had just walked into their territory uninvited. I backed away from the pillar, my heart hammering. The water was up to my shins now. The chamber had multiple exits, 7 doorways leading off in different directions, all of them dark, all of them waiting. I chose one at random and ran. The corridors blurred together after that. I lost track of time, of direction, of everything except the need to keep moving, because I wasn't alone anymore. I could hear them now. The things that lived in this place, they were following me, tracking me, hunting me. At first, it was just sounds, footsteps that weren't mine, breathing that didn't match my rhythm, whispers in a language I'd never heard but somehow understood. They were saying my name, over and over. Marcus, Marcus, Marcus. But the voice wasn't human. It was layered, multiple voices speaking in unison, some high and childlike, some deep and grinding, all of them wrong. Then I started seeing them, just glimpses at first, shadows moving at the edge of my flashlight beam, shapes that darted across intersections too quickly for me to focus on. But gradually, they grew bolder. They wanted me to see them. They wanted me to understand what they were. The first one I got a good look at was in a narrow corridor. I'd stopped to catch my breath, leaning against the wall, when I heard something behind me. I turned, and there it was, standing 20 feet away, watching me. It was tall, maybe 7 feet, and thin, so thin it looked like it might snap in half. Its limbs were too long, joints bending in too many places. Its skin, if you could call it that, was pale and translucent, stretched tight over bones that jutted out at sharp angles. But the worst part was its face. It had my face, not exactly, but close enough, like someone had taken my features and distorted them, stretched them, rearranged them into something that was almost Marcus, but not quite. It smiled at me. Its mouth opened too wide, revealing teeth that were too sharp and too numerous, and then it spoke. "Home," it said, in my voice. "Your home now." I ran. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out and I collapsed in another chamber, this one smaller than the first. The water here was up to my waist, cold and thick. I could feel things brushing against my legs, small things, curious things, testing me, tasting me. I pulled myself onto a raised platform in the center of the chamber and sat there, shaking, trying to catch my breath.
My phone was useless. No signal, the GPS spinning endlessly, the battery draining far too fast. My flashlight was dimming, and all around me, in the darkness beyond my fading light, I could hear them gathering. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all breathing in unison, all waiting. "Why?" I shouted into the darkness. "What do you want from me?" The breathing stopped. Complete silence. Then, from everywhere and nowhere, a voice answered. Not one of those distorted copies of my own voice. This was different. Ancient. Massive. The voice of the place itself. "You opened the door," it said. "You invited yourself in. Now you belong to us." The water kept rising. I had maybe an hour before it would cover the platform I was sitting on, maybe less. I needed to find a way out, but every corridor I'd tried led deeper into this maze, further from anything resembling an exit. It was like the place was reorganizing itself around me, creating new paths and closing off old ones, herding me toward something. I forced myself to stand and chose another doorway at random. The corridor beyond was different from the others. The walls here weren't brick. They were drywall, painted white. Familiar. Too familiar. After a few minutes of walking, I realized where I was. This was my apartment, or rather, a version of it. The hallway leading from my living room to my bedroom. But everything was wrong. The proportions were off. The ceiling was too low. The hallway too long. And the photos hanging on the walls, photos that should have shown my friends, my family, places I'd visited, they showed me, only me. Hundreds of photos of me, but in none of them was I smiling. In all of them, I looked terrified. I stopped in front of one particular photo. It showed me standing in a corridor, this corridor. In the photo, I was looking directly at the camera, my mouth open in a silent scream, and behind me, barely visible in the shadows, were shapes, tall, thin, wrong. I reached out to touch the photo, and the glass was warm, alive. The image moved. The version of me in the photo turned its head slowly and looked directly at me. Its mouth moved, forming words I couldn't hear. I leaned closer, trying to read its lips. "Run," it was saying. "Run, run, run." I stumbled backward and kept moving. The hallway eventually opened into a room that made my stomach drop. My bedroom, exactly as it had been. Same unmade bed, same clothes on the chair, same curtains. But sitting on the edge of my bed, facing away from me, was a figure. It was me. I mean, it looked like me. Same build, same hair, same clothes I'd been wearing when I entered the door, but it was perfectly still, not breathing, not moving, like a mannequin. "Hello?" I said, my voice barely a whisper. The figure's head turned, not its body, just its head, rotating a full 180 degrees until it was facing me. Its face was my face, but the eyes were empty, black, hollow voids where I should have been. "You shouldn't have come here," it said. "I didn't mean to," I said. "I didn't know." "You knew," it interrupted. "You heard the door breathing. You felt the wrongness, but you came anyway because you were curious, because you needed to understand." It stood up, and its movements were jerky, unnatural, like a puppet being controlled by invisible strings. "That's always been your problem, Marcus. You need to understand everything, even things that shouldn't be understood." "What are you?" I asked. "I'm you," it said. "The version of you that belongs here. The version of you that accepted this place, that became part of it." It took a step toward me, and I backed away. "The version of you that you'll become, eventually. Everyone who enters the upside world becomes part of it. The place consumes you, digests you, recreates you, until there's nothing left of who you were, only what the place needs you to be."
No, I said. No, that's not. Look around, it said, spreading its arms. This is your bedroom, but it's not your bedroom. It's a memory, an echo. The place is showing you what you've already lost, because you can't go back, Marcus. The door is gone. The world you knew is gone. This is your home now, forever. It lunged at me. I didn't think. I just ran, back into the corridor, past the photos, past the impossible geometry. The other me was chasing me now, its footsteps heavy and wrong, its breathing, that wet, ragged sound, filling the air around me. I burst through another doorway and found myself in a new chamber. This one was different, older. The walls were covered in that same strange writing, but here it was deeper, darker, like it had been carved centuries ago. And in the center of the chamber was another door, a real door, with brass handle and white paint and everything. My door, the one from my apartment. I ran to it, grabbed the handle, and pulled. It didn't budge. I pulled harder, my hands slipping on the brass. Behind me, I could hear the other me getting closer, its voice echoing through the chamber. There's no escape, it said. There's only acceptance. I yanked on the door with all my strength, and finally, it opened. Bright light poured through, blinding, painful. I shielded my eyes and stumbled forward. I fell through the doorway and hit solid ground, real ground, hardwood floor. I lay there for a moment, gasping, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Slowly, I opened my eyes. I was in my living room, my actual living room. Same couch, same TV, same exposed brick walls. The November sunlight was streaming through the windows. Everything looked normal, real. I scrambled to my feet and spun around. The door, my bedroom door, was closed behind me. I pressed my ear against it, listening. Nothing. No breathing. No heartbeat. Just silence. I pulled out my phone. It was working again. Full signal. The time showed 9:47 a.m., November 30th. I'd been gone for 7 days.
But I'd only packed supplies for a few hours. How had I survived? How had I had water, food, rest? I couldn't remember. The whole experience was already starting to feel like a dream, fragments and impressions rather than coherent memories. I stumbled to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked terrible. Dark circles under my eyes, skin pale and clammy. But I was here. I was back. I'd escaped. For the next 3 days, I tried to return to normal. I called my clients and apologized for missing deadlines. I ate real food. I showered. I slept, though my dreams were full of corridors and whispers and versions of myself that weren't quite right. I told myself it was over, that I'd somehow hallucinated the whole thing. Stress-induced psychosis. That had to be it. But little things kept bothering me. The apartment felt different. The acoustics were wrong. Sounds echoed in ways they shouldn't. When I worked on audio projects, I kept hearing things buried in the recordings. Whispers, breathing, things that shouldn't be there, but were. I'd clean them out, export the file, and they'd be back the next time I opened it. And the door, the bedroom door, I couldn't bring myself to open it. I slept on the couch. I avoided even looking at it. Because sometimes, when the apartment was very quiet, I could hear it. That soft, rhythmic breathing, just on the edge of perception. On the 4th day back, I finally worked up the courage to open it. My hand shook as I reached for the handle. I took a deep breath, turned it, and pushed. My bedroom looked normal, exactly as I'd left it 7 days ago. Unmade bed, clothes on the chair, window closed. But there was water on the floor, just a little bit, a thin layer spreading out from under the bed. I stepped inside, my heart racing, and crouched down to look underneath. There was nothing there, just hardwood and dust, but the water was real. I could feel it soaking through my socks, and it was warm. That's when I noticed the walls. The brick pattern was wrong, subtly wrong. The bricks weren't quite aligned the way they should be, and carved into one of them, very faintly, almost invisible, was a symbol, one of those same symbols I'd seen in the chambers, glowing very slightly. I backed out of the room and slammed the door shut. My chest was tight. I couldn't breathe. Because I understood now. I hadn't escaped. Not really. The upside world was still here. It had followed me back. Or maybe, and this was worse, maybe I'd brought a piece of it with me. Maybe I'd been infected, contaminated, changed. I grabbed my jacket and left the apartment. I needed to get out, clear my head.
proved to myself that the outside world was still normal, that I was still connected to reality. The street looked right. Cars passing, people walking, coffee shops and stores, and all the mundane details of everyday life. I walked for blocks, breathing in the cold November air, trying to feel grounded, real. But then I noticed the reflections in the windows. When I looked at my reflection, I looked normal. But in my peripheral vision, just for a split second, I'd see something else. Something taller, thinner, wrong. I stopped in front of a store window and stared at my reflection. Me, normal Marcus, same face, same body. But when I blinked, for just a fraction of a second, my reflection didn't blink with me. It smiled, that too wide smile with too many teeth. I ran all the way back to my apartment building, up the stairs, fumbling with my keys. I burst through my door and slammed it behind me, locking it, putting on the chain. I stood there, breathing hard, trying to calm down. That's when I saw them, wet footprints on my floor, leading from the bedroom door to where I was standing. But they weren't my footprints. They were too big, too long, wrong. And from behind my bedroom door, I heard it clearly now. That breathing, slow, deep, patient, waiting. I didn't sleep that night, or the next night, or the night after that. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back in those corridors. Every shadow in my apartment seemed to move on its own. Every sound was a potential threat. I was coming apart. The rational part of my brain, the part that had built a career on logic and precision, was screaming that this couldn't be real, but the rest of me knew better. On the 5th night back, I made a decision. I couldn't keep living like this. I needed answers. I needed to understand what the upside world was, what it wanted, and how to break its connection to me. So I did what I should have done from the beginning. I started researching. I searched online for anything related to breathing doors, alternate dimensions, impossible spaces. Most of it was garbage, creepypasta, horror fiction, paranoid conspiracy theories. But buried in the noise, I found references, scattered reports from people who claimed to have experienced similar things, accounts that were quickly deleted or dismissed, but they were there, and they all described the same basic pattern: a doorway that changed, a space that shouldn't exist, a feeling of being watched, followed, consumed.
One post from a forum that had been shut down years ago but archived somewhere deep in the internet caught my attention. It was written by someone calling themselves Dr. Eleanor Voss. She claimed to have studied what she called threshold phenomena, liminal spaces that served as connections between our reality and something else. She theorized that consciousness itself could create these spaces under certain conditions: isolation, obsession, extreme focus on a single point or idea. The mind could, in rare cases, tunnel through the fabric of reality and create a pocket dimension, a personal hell tailored to the individual. But here's what made my blood run cold. She claimed that once you created such a space, once you gave it life through your attention and fear, it became permanent. It would always be there, always connected to you, and it would slowly expand, bleeding into your reality until the two worlds merged completely. She called this process dimensional digestion. The post ended with a warning. If you've opened a door you shouldn't have, there's only one way to close it. You have to go back. You have to confront what's on the other side and unmake it. But understand, very few people who attempt this survive, and those who do are never quite the same. I sat back, my hands shaking. Go back. That was the answer. I had to return to the upside world and somehow end this. But how? How do you destroy something that exists in the spaces between reality? How do you fight a place that's alive and conscious and infinitely adaptable? I didn't have answers, but I knew I couldn't keep running. The upside world was already here, in my apartment, in my reflections, maybe even inside me. If I didn't act, it would consume everything. I spent the next 2 days preparing. I gathered supplies, flashlights, batteries, a digital recorder, a knife, water, food. I wrote down everything I could remember about the layout of the corridors, the chambers, the symbols on the walls. I tried to find patterns, logic, something I could use. And then, on the 7th night after my return, exactly 2 weeks since this all began, I stood in front of my bedroom door one last time. The breathing was louder now. I could hear it clearly even from the living room. A steady rhythm. In and out. In and out. The door was warm to the touch.
pulsing, alive. I gripped the handle and took a deep breath. This time I wasn't going in blind. This time I had a plan. Sort of. Find the center, the heart, whatever was powering this place, and destroy it. I opened the door. The corridor beyond had changed. It was shorter now, more focused. Like the upside world knew I was coming and had prepared something special for me. The walls were covered in those symbols, all of them glowing now, pulsing in rhythm with that heartbeat. The water on the floor was deeper, up to my knees immediately, and warmer, almost hot. I waded forward, my flashlight cutting through the darkness.
The corridor twisted once, twice, then opened into a chamber I hadn't seen before. It was massive, cathedral-like. The ceiling disappeared into darkness far above, and in the center, rising from the water like some organic pillar, was something that my mind struggled to process what it was seeing. It looked like a heart, but not a human heart, something much larger, much older. It was made of the same translucent material as the creatures I'd seen, stretched and pulsing, filled with dark fluid that flowed through visible vessels branching out in all directions. The vessels disappeared into the walls, the floor, the ceiling, connecting everything. This was the source, the core, the thing that powered the entire upside world. And surrounding it, standing in the water, were the creatures, dozens of them, all of them wearing my face, all of them watching me. "You came back," one of them said. "We knew you would. You belong here." "No," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "I don't, and I'm ending this, right now." I pulled out the knife I'd brought, a large hunting knife I'd bought specifically for this, and started wading toward the heart. The creatures didn't move to stop me. They just watched, waiting. When I was close enough to touch it, I raised the knife. The surface of the heart was hot, pulsing. I could feel the vibration of its beat through the water, through the air, through my bones. This was it. One cut, one wound, and maybe this whole place would collapse. I drove the knife in. The heart screamed. It wasn't a sound I heard with my ears. It was something deeper, more fundamental. The entire upside world screamed with it. The water around me began to boil. The walls cracked. The creatures clutched their heads and shrieked. And from the wound I'd made, something poured out. Not blood, something else. Something dark and viscous and alive. It touched the water and spread like ink. And everywhere it touched, reality broke. The chamber started to dissolve, fragments of different places appearing and disappearing. I saw my apartment. I saw streets I'd walked. I saw places I'd never been but somehow recognized. All of them overlapping, all of them bleeding into each other. The heart was dying, but it wasn't dying quietly. It was taking everything with it. "What have you done?" one of the creatures screamed at me. "This isn't just our world. It's yours too. It's all connected. You can't destroy this without destroying yourself." I looked down at my hands. They were starting to fade, becoming translucent. I could see through them to the water below. The knife slipped from my fingers and disappeared into the dark liquid spreading from the heart's wound. I'd made a terrible mistake. I don't remember how I got out. One moment I was in that chamber, watching reality collapse around me, feeling myself dissolve into nothing. The next, I was on the floor of my living room, gasping for air, soaking wet and freezing cold. My bedroom door was closed.
Smoking. The paint was blackened and peeling. When I touched it, it was cold as ice. Dead. Whatever had been on the other side was gone. Destroyed. But so was something in me. I pulled myself up and looked at my hands. They looked normal now, solid, real. But sometimes when the light hits them just right, I can see through them, just for a second, like I'm not entirely here anymore, like part of me is still there, in the ruins of the upside world. The apartment is quiet now. The breathing has stopped. The shadows don't move on their own. Everything seems normal, but I know better. I can feel it. The thin spot, the weak place between realities where the door used to be. It's not gone. It's just waiting, healing, growing back. And I'm changing too. Little things at first. I don't need to sleep as much. I can hear frequencies I shouldn't be able to hear. When I look in the mirror,
My reflection is sometimes a fraction of a second behind my movements. And my dreams, God, my dreams. I'm back in those corridors, but I'm not running anymore. I'm walking, exploring, like I'm learning the layout, like I'm mapping it, preparing. The worst part? Sometimes I wake up and my feet are wet, covered in that warm, viscous liquid, and there are wet footprints leading from my bedroom, even though the door is still closed, all the way to where I'm sleeping on the couch. I'm running out of time. The upside world isn't gone. It's inside me now, and every day I can feel it growing stronger, taking root, spreading through my thoughts, my memories, my sense of self. Soon, there won't be a distinction between me and it, between here and there. I'm recording this as a warning. If you're hearing this, if you found this recording, it means I'm gone. Or worse, it means I'm still here, but I'm not me anymore. It means the transformation is complete. Don't go looking for doors that breathe. Don't investigate sounds you can't explain. Don't let your curiosity drag you into places that shouldn't exist, because once you open that door, once you step through, you can never really come back. You'll just be something else, something that looks like you, sounds like you, but isn't. I need to go now. My bedroom door just opened, on its own, and I can hear it calling me, my own voice, coming from the darkness beyond, saying my name, telling me to come home. And the terrible thing is, I want to. Part of me wants to walk through that door and never come back, because maybe that's where I belong now. Maybe I was always meant to end up there. Maybe we all are, eventually. The door is wider now, and I can see them standing in the corridor beyond. All those versions of me, waiting, smiling, welcoming me back. This is Marcus Webb. If you're listening to this, don't trust your doors. Don't trust your reflections. And whatever you do, don't